Greetings, mortals, and welcome back to my camera going crazy.
And me going completely off center, all that good jazz. I'm so hot. It is very warm here, and I have complaints. I came back into my house, and it's not as cold as I want it to be after having just been running around. So, you know, I have concerns. Do I have audio? I do have audio. Do you have audio? You have audio. Okay. Hey, sup? How's it going? Did we do our inventory management? We sure did not. We have this helm that we're going to want to use eventually. We have... I'm going to move my stuff away from there. Okay, we're going to sell those now. We're just going to do the selling first before we do anything else. Sorry I'm late. It was a problem.
There's no room.
With my general capacity for slumber. That's actually not true. Weirdly, it was an interaction that involved my insomnia, but was mostly just a freak occurrence of I don't even know what. Like I like got gas at 2 o'clock in the morning, and my body's like, oh god, and freaked out. And then like I didn't have severe gas or anything. I just like I got up and was like, oh okay, you know, let's go.
Thanks.
And there was like nothing. There's nothing. There's nothing. I wasted so much time waking up for nothing. It's terrible. Bodies shouldn't be allowed. There ought to be a law against your body waking you up with some bullshit for no reason. That's what I'm saying.
Thanks. Come again.
There ought to be a law.
See anything you want? Thanks a lot.
Let's see.
See anything you want? Thanks a lot.
That'll teach him. Everyone knows that your autonomous physical processes have great respect
Thanks a lot.
for laws, rules, and regulations.
Thanks.
Let's see here.
This is nice.
Got that. Oh, we have another Sirtal ore, so we should probably use that to make some more weapons. Just in case we have anything useful coming out of that. Probably not, but we'll see. We'll see. Hey, it's a dagger. Just watch the legendary.
We don't need this.
It's not legendary. Oh, it's got a good secondary effect. It's not good enough to use an eye on. But it's good. Okay, unarmed on a thing we should probably hold on to. Wait, is this is the thing we're going to use? Question mark. Yeah, we need to put this in our offhand. This we can sell. This probably can sell. So we're going to sell up a bunch of stuff now that we do not need, and then once we've done that, we can move on.
Need a new weapon? Thanks. Come again. See anything you want?
Ba-ba-ba-ba-bum.
Thanks a lot. See anything you want? Thanks a lot.
Now, next on our agenda is to pop down, deal with
Can I
this.
help you with anything?
I think you can help me with clearing my inventory a little bit.
Thanks.
Not a lot bit. Okay. So we've now got 130 grand. So how are we doing on skills, expertise? Do you have everything? You have everything that you need that you can get. I should probably get perception up to whatever it needs to be. This needs to be 4 to get expert. We'll need to do that soon. You are probably... Are you done with everything? I think you're done with everything as well. No, you're not. You need spirit and mind expertise. So you have dagger and arms and bodybuilding. We need master disarm when we can get it. I think we might be able to get that here. I'm not actually positive. I think this guy might be the GM for disarm, but he might be master. He has like an expert, a master, and a grandmaster, I think, in terms of skills. So the Prince of Thieves or whatever he's called is fairly useful. Let's see here. It's also very funny because it's like, why is he the spy master? Right? Because like traditionally you would have your spy master be like someone who's high status, not low status. And a guy who lives in the sewers is not high status. I feel like there's a bizarre association of like criminality with spycraft, if that makes any sense. Whereas it's like, no. The whole point of being a spy is that the things that you do aren't illegal. Everything you do, you're allowed to do, actually. That's why diplomatic immunity is so useful, right? Because it's like, by the time a spy is engaging in behavior like, banditry or theft or whatever, by the time they're doing it, it's not illegal for them to do it. Right? They don't start out doing banditry, they start out doing politics. And then when they start doing the banditry, they're in a position where it's no longer illegal for them to. That's my understanding.
Never seen one before.
This is not going well. Let's get out of here. They're going to kill me before I get there. I'm so
Kill me.
loud. How am I not dead yet? Weren't the like bandits fully able to just kill me instantly? Am I misremembering that? It could have missed me like half a dozen times. But I also could just be misremembering how strong they are. Oh right, I think it was... No, from 100% HP, the only enemy that could kill... No, I think that... No... I don't remember. Okay, there is a bandit in play. This is not quite as good of a section, because if I go further to the right at all, I'll start going up in elevation, which will move me further away from them. We don't want to be further away from them. We want to be as close to them as possible for these kinds of strats.
Who's next?
Okay, should
Nice.
It's a bad idea. I don't know what... It looks like it's a robber and a raider. Yeah, I didn't have vision on the right side there, so I didn't actually know everything that was there. Let's see. Gained in 7. So we're definitely going to catch up to the other one, but I don't know if we're going to get enough to accomplish our objective here. That's the thing. Why? Okay, there's got to be a problem here. It is way too freaking hot in this room. Why is it so hot? The AC somehow got set to the sun. I don't know what the sun does. I don't know what that is. I don't know what it is. But there was no cold air coming out of the air conditioner. So we fixed it. There was in fact a problem. The problem was not just that I was outside and came inside. The problem was that I went outside and then came inside, and it was just as hot in here as it was out there, and was starting to get hotter. That's the issue. I wonder how hot it gets in the Singapore home. Like, I'm actually very curious about the because it's basically just like concrete, right? So like, I'm curious how much like if you don't use air conditioning, how much hotter it is inside than it is outside.
Oh, I need healing.
I just don't know. Just don't know. It's gonna become relevant over the next couple decades. You know, living on the equator, the planet getting hotter is a little bit concerning. In part because of the fact that like people think of the equator as being really hot, but it's really not necessarily. Like, it depends on where you are. Some places on the equator, I'm sure, are very hot, but most places on the equator aren't that hot. You have to go, you have to dip a little bit into the northern or southern hemisphere to get the really hot places for the most part, just because of the fact that like they're gonna tilt some portions of the year directly into the sun. Like, if you look at like extreme temperatures, like Minnesota, I believe, has more extreme heat than Florida does, right? And Florida has more extreme heat than Singapore does. Now, that's not entirely accurate because just the like temperature is not like a perfect indicator of temperature in a useful fashion. If that makes any sense, like for people, you know, staying alive, there's like a difference between different ways that the temperature can be, you know, X temperature or whatever, right? So it's, you know, I think it's generally a little hotter than the temperature would indicate on the equator. But the thing that's probably more of an issue is if anyone lives in a place that doesn't have weather, or has ever been to a place that doesn't have weather, or just heard news stories from places that don't have weather. Like if you look at like England, which seems to not have snow, like it's just not a thing that they have. They just get blown apart by the slightest whiff of snow. Like their airports shut down as a result of it. And that's mostly funny. It's obviously really disruptive, but like when snow causes a problem, for you, it's often very funny and like, oh, you know, these idiots don't know how to shovel or whatever, right? And that's like the general response, and it's all fun and games and whatever. And I mean, people are getting hurt probably, but also it's fun and games. Fun fact: you can't have both. But when it comes to like heat, heat's a bit different. Where heat gets real serious real fast. So like if your infrastructure isn't able to handle an increase in temperature because you don't have summers, so nothing is like heat tested for anything outside of like the maximum heat that that they were built to be in a specific environment that has a certain level of heat. So like if something ends up being like, oh yes, well this is cooking your brain temperatures indoors now, that's a real issue. That is like, obviously I have air conditioning. This isn't like a risk to, you know, my health and safety. At least not a major one, right? But for like a lot of like, you know, particularly like older uncles and aunties who are just kind of used to being in really high temperatures and just kind of trucking it out, you don't really need to increase the temperature by too much more to go from, well, you know, today is just gonna suck, to yeah, I have a medical emergency. So it's something that I'm always very concerned about, as you know, as we get new record temperatures. I'm just like, this could be an issue for some folks. But yeah, places that don't usually have weather get slight weather, and then it just fucks up everything. Whereas places like, you know, it's pretty hard for Florida to get completely fucked by weather. Which sounds weird considering that the place is continuously getting completely fucked by weather. But like, Florida keeps running and doing its thing through it for the most part. Like, yeah, sure, you know, you won't have any power in your home for 3 weeks, but you expected to not have power in your home for at least a week at a time because you're from Florida, so you're like prepared for that eventuality in a way that, like, if the power goes out in Singapore for a week, you're gonna have like riots in the street, and you might get like a Lord of the Flies situation, like real quick. You know, you just might get a Lord of the Flies situation in a real fast manner.
I'm hurt badly.
You know, I should I just watched a Behind the Bastards episode that was about like a guy who came up through like a British boarding school during the height of the British Empire. And I actually have to reread Lord of the Flies because I kind of feel like the kids in Lord of the Flies had more chill to them than they would have had back at home. Right? Like, they went more like barbaric in the sense that they were running around without clothes and doing stuff that was, you know, not considered proper. But in the sense of being like cruel and mean-spirited to each other and doing like crimes against humanity, I feel like they were maybe like doing less crazy shit than they were in like school. And maybe that's the point of the book. Maybe that was the point of the book. Maybe the point of the book wasn't about, like, you know, the thin veneer of civilization being something that, you know, kids, that if you just took away the trappings of it for a moment, people would descend into anarchy. And it might be that without the thin veneer of civilization, the behavior that we teach our children to engage in would be considered barbaric. I'm curious about that. I'd be curious to know if the actual point of the book is lost on people who don't understand, like, the kinds of crazy shit that goes on in those schools. And that is like, it's not like a secret that it goes on in those schools. It's like, this is the way the school was set up, right? This is the explicit intention. So it's like, I'm curious. I'm curious about that. Lord of the Flies was probably written, what, in like the early 1900s? So it's not like directly translatable to the time period, but they're not that far apart. Was it in the 1950s? Yeah. So it's definitely not the same time period as the time period that I'm now vaguely familiar with. But hey, look at that. We got there. We got to 26. Let's see here.
We don't need it.
Okay, so next we go to Might and Magic 8. We clear out the next section there. It's funny that yesterday you were asking me about the possibility of playing other games, Celestial, because of the fact that also yesterday a friend of mine sent me a text message saying, hey, there's a game that you need to play. No context. Don't do any research. Don't look it up. Just play this game. And you have to stream it. And I'm like,
Traveling today?
okay.
See anything you want?
And I'll probably get around to doing that eventually.
Thanks a lot.
I told them that if I
New
haven't
weapon?
acted on that by the time I get back from America, they need to send me another message about it. So I may or may not act on that. It's not on Steam, so I'm incredibly lazy. But we'll potentially get to that eventually. Because I also have the other projects that I need to get to work on as well. God, I'm leaving so soon. Wow, I'm leaving real soon. Let's see here. What do I do here? I might. We're going through this in a very. Let's see. Free game that was going to be forever lost at challenge. No idea what that means. Elevation. It is tempting to jump into one of the two types of projects, because the I feel like the viewership has gone down in the last week or so for this, which people might be starting to get burned out on this. Or it's the other possibility is that it's just scheduling, right, where people are just not available this week to watch. And some people, I should check the views on the VODs. That would actually explain quite a lot. Because, it would be real life spread across like a dozen people. You know what I mean? There's been some fairly important events that have happened in the last week and a half. So it's not like it's unrealistic or unreasonable, to think that people might be busy. But I also do have a mostly international audience. I don't know that half of my viewers are in the United States at the moment. So, and while the current global trends are hitting everybody, and what's going on in the U.S. is going to hit everybody eventually, the specifics of this particular week being rough is more of an American thing than anybody else, because American foreign policy doesn't change that much between Democrats and Republicans for the most part. So it's sad but true. I don't know that most people internationally actually have their lives meaningfully impacted on most of these elections. This is going to be impactful. This is going to meaningfully. This is not. I'm not trying to suggest that this time it's not going to be impactful. I'm saying that you have to be paying attention to the United States to be concerned about what's going on there, and I feel like a lot of people overseas are only vaguely familiar with what the fuck is going on over there. But anyway, it is tempting, because I'm now at a position where I was in Erathia and I didn't cure my disease. I'm now in a position where it actually would make sense to jump into a really short thing. What day am I getting on a plane? I'm getting on a plane in a week. Yeah, I need to think about this. So right now, we have completed a good portion of the early game here, and we've got a really nice solid track, right? We're getting the stuff done great. I'm actually very happy with how this run is going. We're basically we're getting the okay, tick up one level, get to the next place, tick up one level, get to the next place. I think we're doing a pretty good job with maximizing our bolster for this, right? God, I'm gonna have to rewatch the VODs, or actually, I should take notes. I should take notes before before I stop doing stuff. So maybe I split this into 2 YouTube videos and actually do just jump into something completely different, because if I don't do other things, I'm visiting my family. So the hopefully the last time that I'm going to America for the foreseeable future. And let's see here. I don't like going to America, but I can't get my family members to travel 12 feet to Canada to meet me. So it's a huge pain in the ass. The problem with Americans, this is something that I am going to complain about, is that Americans think that the entire rest of the world is like a chaotic wasteland that doesn't have access to basic human services. And so they don't want to go places that are objectively better for the specific problem that they have, because of the thing that they have being so bad in the United States. So when it comes to medical stuff, they don't want to go to Canada because they don't know how the Canadian healthcare system works. And they feel like if they don't understand how the system works, they're gonna fucking die. That's the... it's funny, we didn't actually end Erathia because we got to the next level before we actually got there. So let's see here. Look, it's valid to their lived experience, but it's very frustrating. Let's see here. What do I want to do? Because I am actually tempted to. No, I can't start up the thing. Yeah, but you can just look them up. It's not hard, right? If you have a question about, okay, if this thing happens, those are answerable questions, right? You just have to literally ask a person who knows. You know what I mean? It's not the thing is that most systems in America are kind of designed to kill you unless you get a master's degree in them, right? That's how I would describe every institutional structure of the United States. Whereas most places on Earth, the systems are not set up in such a way that the intention is to kill you if you don't get a master's degree in them. Well, I would say that's fair, except you do know the question, because your question is, if I have a problem with this health issue cropping up while I'm there, what does that entail? What do I have to do? Right? To which you can ask that very specific question to a person that you know who has moved to Canada, and they can tell you exactly what happens if in that specific scenario. And then what it's one thing to be okay, yes, there's a problem here, and I know what the problem is. It's because of this thing, right? That is true. Well, assumptions can hurt you, absolutely, but objectively speaking, if you have a healthcare crisis, you're probably better off not being in the United States, even if all your doctors are. I'm just gonna flat out say it. Like, the doctors that these people have are fucking trying to kill them. So, like, given the insane shit, the absolutely heinous shit that was going on in Florida. Okay, this is a person who was getting Florida healthcare, okay? Where the best doctor they have was periodically like letting a random brother do surgery without telling the patient. Okay, like if that's the best doctor, okay? There comes a certain point where I'm sorry, but your concerns about the rest of the world aren't valid. You're literally from Florida. Okay? Like there comes a point where you have to say, I'm sorry, but you live in Florida. You don't have the right to complain anymore. Right? Like, there's like, you can't be like, oh no, I don't know, I might be in danger going to somewhere that isn't Florida. It's like, man, you could go to Myanmar, okay, which I think is still in a civil war. You could go to Myanmar and you're in less danger than you are right now. like, come on, like, be serious, right? But the problem is that when you start talking about how objectively bad, like, America is at all things, and how it's like, yeah, man, you just don't have to worry about shit like that when you go overseas, right? You run into this brick wall of pride because Americans are told that America's the greatest country on earth. And it's like, yeah, man, no, that's not true. The rest of the world is mostly just better. Now, obviously, there's parts of America that are perfectly nice and pleasant. Key being nice, not, like, kind, right? But yeah, well, they're pretty stuck, like physically speaking, like, America's like a trap. Like, it's like the goal of the American economy is to trap people in a cycle of poverty that will eventually leave them destitute in the street, right? Like, that's like the American... That's like what the entire system is kind of designed for. Like, it's like pretty explicitly there to extract money from the poor to deliver it to the rich in the most efficient manner possible. Like, that's pretty clear. Like, if you look at most, if you look at almost any statistic, and if you look at the way that sort of like certain forms of predatory lending are legal, if you look at the ways that like things are set up, it is pretty clear that like it's like, oh yes, well, this is a trap, and you can't get out of the trap because you don't have the money to leave, right? Like, that's a core component, and part of that is probably tied up to how much of like American politics is dominated by people who own land for a living, which is unusual in the modern economy because capitalists usually don't own land anymore. But even though like coal is a really, really tiny segment of the American economy, it has a massive impact on American politics. And the reason is because the people who own a coal mine own every person in town. Like, in a very meaningful sense, this town belongs to the person who owns the mine. And they will vote according to the way that their boss tells them to, because they do not have real private ballots. They do not have any of the shit that you would expect from, a modern democracy. This, like, it's a problem, right? Like, anyway, so there's a degree of that to why it is, because it's like if you have a situation like that, it means that keeping people permanently locked into debt where they can't leave a place means that they can't escape from coal towns, right? Like, that's a big deal, but... yeah, that's really horrifying. Let's see. It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. You know, we should treat people better. You know, just as a category, we should treat people better, actually. That's a thing we should do. But anyway, the thing is that the poverty cycles that entrap people in the United States are one thing, but they're also a thing that, like, the specific people that I'm talking about, that's not the problem that they have. They're dealing with ideological issues more than anything else, in the sense of, like, they have legitimate, you know, issues at home, but those legitimate issues that they have at home don't lend credence to their aversion to being somewhere else. If that makes any sense. Like, the reason they're averse to everywhere else is because of propaganda they grew up with. It's not because of, like, oh, I don't have the money to, you know, get on a plane kind of stuff, if that makes any sense. Like, it's just like a very different type of dynamic where there are, you know, there are pretty sizable differences. Ooh! Ooh! Oh, you know, that was predictable. Oh! Oh shit, I didn't open up the live split thing. Let's open up the live split thing. But yeah, this is way too big. Oh wait, I can just shrink it. That's a thing I can do. How do I grab it? Yoke. Okay. So we've got like a whole setup now for this. I've basically just created a series of counters. So the series of counters will allow me to basically if people like do a highlighted message, they can convert the reloads into either push-ups or squats, and the multiplier indicates how many each of them are worth, and the multiplier follows the rules for the thing. I'll need to put like an actual like descriptor box into the into here. I typed it all out in the Discord, but flaming hoops indeed. Yeah, it's incredibly wild how expensive it is to exist in the United States. Oof. Like, it's bad enough that I have to, like, when I'm getting like travel insurance and stuff like that, because America is so much more expensive than everywhere else to get like medical stuff done, like the travel insurance just doesn't cover American medicine, right? Because it's like no one can cover American medicine. It's an insane country. The prices of everything are just so out of control. And that's entirely off the bat. It's wild. The reason the prices are so out of control is because they're not real prices. Nobody's supposed to actually pay them. Nobody's supposed to actually pay them. Like I remember I've seen these medical bills that the Americans get, and it's like, oh, here's the listed price. And then here's the price the insurance company paid. And it's like an order of magnitude less money. And then they go, oh, the insurance company's ripping off the doctor and not paying them the price of the actual price. It's like, no, they're not. They're not doing that. The price is fake. That's a fake price. The reason that price exists is so that if you go in without insurance, you go bankrupt. That's why that price is there. The insurance company is using their leverage over doctors to make them give fake prices to patients. Right? Like, that's just a fully fictional price. No one is supposed to pay it. And people pay it anyway because if they don't have it, because insurance isn't a guarantee. So people end up having to pay it anyway, and they just go bankrupt. But it's not meant to be the real price of the thing. Nobody's paying that hasn't had a catastrophic failure in the system, right? I am not doing great. I'm not doing so hot. I'm gonna blame the lack of sleep. I got woken up in the middle of the night. Didn't get as much sleep as I would have liked. I'm gonna blame that. Is it related? Probably not. Is the level 0 migraine that I've got? No, not level 0, sorry. This is a level 0.1. There's a level 0.1 migraine that I've got. Is that the cause? Who can say? Who can say? It's not. It's not that. I'm just playing badly. But that's beside the point. We need to construct the narrative here. Yeah, I mean, I feel like the issue that you run into is like when your political discourse is like run by people who despise humans, like you end up with a situation where there's the idea of kindness is treated as like bad, right? Or childish, right? The British have a lot of problems. When it comes to healthcare, the British have quite a lot of problems. I don't know that the British have any shame, so there is that. Or rather, the British are good at not showing their shame because they are continuously ashamed. But you never know. You can't tell the difference when a British person is ashamed because that's just their natural state of being because their culture directly ingrains that into them from a young age. That's the indication that I've gotten from every British person I've ever heard talk about British society is that the entire purpose of British society is to make you feel shame at all times, which is bad and terrible, and they shouldn't feel ashamed. That's not good. Shame is not a useful emotion. But yeah, I can't imagine the like housing insurance in places like Florida.
I can't
My assumption is that in Florida, they're just going to start ripping people off where they give them really extremely exorbitant prices for their house insurance, and then they go, oh, by the way, this doesn't cover floods when the next hurricane comes in. Like getting property in large portions of the United States, like, how could you insure a Floridian property? Right? Like, you can't, nobody can insure Florida's property. Like, the amount of welfare that it would entail to do insurance for Floridian property at this point would be on a level that, like, would make a socialist blush. Right? Like, you can't keep rebuilding these houses in the middle of a flood zone, you know? Yeah, the fires in California. There's obviously earthquakes too, but the earthquakes aren't necessarily getting worse. Let's see. Yeah, it's an issue. There's a huge issue where if you don't have the ability to successfully sue a company, contract law doesn't exist. Right? Like, it doesn't matter whether you explicitly are in the right and you are owed a thing by a company, or anyone else for that matter, if you don't have the ability to enforce that. And it's really, really hard, it turns out, to enforce that kind of shit, because the systems are designed to favor them, not you. And, you know, if you have a lot of money, then you can, right? Like, you can, and a lot of time, for that matter. But you have to have a really clear-cut case to be able to get anything done. And by the time it gets through the court system, you're probably dead. Because, you know, you're a human. And they can go through 6 legal teams dragging out a case where the legal teams literally die of old age. It's an issue. It's an issue. But yeah, the number of times, actually, that I have run into a situation where I felt like, okay, so my only option that I have at this point is to either go to some sort of media organization and hope that I can drop the share prices of this company with this random problem that I have, which I can't, because it's not a sexy enough problem for the media to give a shit, or to sue them. And companies these days will just go, yeah, so I stole your shit. So what? Right? Like, who gives a shit? To give a random example of this exact behavior. So I have a contract with an ISP, right? As one does. And they gave a free trial of an unrelated service at some point that we weren't paying. Because we didn't know that we had it on the bill in the first place, right? We have auto pay going out. So we're paying the bill for our internet service. And then we have this completely separate service that we're not paying for. They cut off our internet, which you can't do that. I've paid for that. Fuck you. That's it. Imagine if you went to, imagine if you went to a McDonald's, okay, and you ordered a burger or something, and through some cockamamie scheme, they managed to scam their way into delivering a thing to your table that you're not using. Like they like just like let's say they hid an ice cream sundae under your table. Okay, they hid an ice cream sundae under your table, and then 5 minutes into your meal, they come over and take your hamburger back because you haven't paid for the sundae that they hid under your table. Right? That's a crime. Like, that is obviously illegal, right? Like, you obviously cannot steal something that someone has already paid for because they didn't pay for something that you, like, tricked them into contracting a payment for that's unrelated to the payment of the other thing, right? They're not related contracts. And that's insane. Like, that's an insane thing. Obviously illegal. Obviously you can't do that. There's absolutely nothing you can do that's actionable against the company. There's nothing you can do about it. Because at the end of the day, they already have your money. They already have your money. So what are you going to do? It's fucking crazy. And the potential answer is to sue them. But most of what they're doing is legal. And what are you going to sue them for? Right? Like, what are you going to get out of it, and what are they going to lose out of it? What, they have to turn your internet back on? A thing that costs them basically nothing? Right? Like, it costs them nothing to do it. And it's like, oh, well, you could go to another company, and, you know, if you're working with a different company, then maybe you won't have to deal with that issue. No, all the companies are the same company now. You definitely will have to deal with the exact same problem that you were dealing with this company, because they're all doing the same thing. It's the standard practice. And it's not just the, like, expected behavior where it's like, ah, yes, we expect corporations to do evil. There's been an interesting shift in my lifetime away from, like, you know, being good to people is good, actually, and corporations are like a necessary evil, and, you know, like, rich people are bad but good, and but it's good that they exist, or something like that. Like, that I feel like was the way that, like, things worked for a long time. And now it's just like, oh no, it's morally good for you to get scammed. Is like the like actual, like, political, the like ideology of the world is it's good for people to get scammed and to turn real legitimate businesses into opportunities to scam people. That is good behavior. It's not just like behavior that through some vague way will magic its way into, you know, decent results at the end, because people will stop doing that behavior when there are consequences for their actions. It's good to scam people, actually, right? Like, that's a good thing to do. And that's a mainstream belief in today's society. Like, worldwide. It's not like it's a limited to America thing, or it's a limited to Singapore thing. That's just, holy shit. How? That blade spell did so much damage. Weren't you at full HP? Ouch. You know, maybe this is a bad place for us to be. Do we want to try to just jump up on... I think I'm going to try to just jump up there. We're going to see if we can go crazy on this. That's wild. That's really wild. Yeah, like, because like insurance is kind of a scam, right? Like it is just a gambling thing, right? So like it is very much like, oh yes, I'm going to gamble against my own interests or against my own future. You're basically like shorting your own financial future, right? That's functionally what you're doing with insurance. But like, what's that? That's not a robust way to describe that. That's a spiritually correct way to describe that has nothing to do with the actual physical properties of either of those things. But you get the idea, right? You are spiritually shorting in order to there. But complete with the fact that like paying for insurance objectively makes your life worse, right? Because you're paying for insurance. So like you're more likely to run into a problem because you're paying for insurance. In the same way that when people short a company, it makes it more likely for the company to collapse that because it's being shorted. Like the short directly harms the company. Paying for insurance directly harms you. Right? So so like insurance is conceptually just bad, because it's like, man, we've got governments. We already pay taxes. That's your insurance. Is that the government is supposed to take care of you. That's literally their job. Whereas the job of an insurance company is not to take care of you. The job of an insurance company is to make profit. And they make profit in direct opposition to their ability to do their job. It's not like other things, right? There's no product with an insurance company. An insurance company doesn't sell a product. They don't manufacture anything. They don't provide a service. They're basically a lever in between you and your doctor. The only way that they make profit is if they overcharge, right? Like that's the only, and you could argue on some level that that's true for all capitalists, and it is true for all capitalists, but it's worse for insurance companies because insurance companies just move money around. All they're doing is stealing your money and then directly leveraging the money that you have given them and their control over the healthcare system to increase the prices of healthcare and stuff like that. It's what I feel like I'm doing badly here, and maybe I should do a different. Maybe I should be doing something different here. This is not going well. I guess if I cleared out the Dragon Slayers first, that might actually help. Because if I cleared the Dragon Slayers, then I could actually use the town. Because like right now, I can't really use the town because all the Dragon Slayers will fight the Naga. Let's see here. All the Dragon Slayers will... So... But if I killed the Dragon Slayers first... then I wouldn't have to deal with that. So I could fight the Dragon Slayers in the town. The other thing I could do is... Do I have the ability to just turn in some quests to get the fuck out of here? I feel like I might. I only need like half a level's worth of... I have the one. I can turn in the poison quest. Do I have two? Oh, I'm an idiot. I shouldn't be doing this. I should be doing a dungeon, right? I should be doing a dungeon. I need, because I can get this all the way up to. I can get this all the way up to the next level. Wow, that's some talent. Okay, so which dungeon do I want to try? I could try to do the wolf dungeon. Because I shouldn't be clearing an exterior area right now at all. I just came to the wrong place. I guess I could try doing the Wolf Dungeon again. Wolf Dungeon is going to be real hard. I will say it's going to be hard for me to get dungeons done in Might Magic 8. Might Magic 8 is going to be real hard to make progress in for a while. This place is going to be a shit show. There's no way that I'm doing this right now. It's too densely populated right at the start. So that's not happening. I'm going to go grab some food, I think. Yeah, I'm gonna just see how much food I can pick up here. It's currently Wednesday. Let's see. But yeah, the kinds of like skeezy shit that I have to deal with like in Singapore from companies is like low level. It's like the low level fraud. It's not the kind of shit that like would even register in 2024 for people in, I think, kind of like most places in the world. It's gotten so bad out there, you know, because like they're hitting me. It's not that it's not as creative; it's that there's protections in place for the really important stuff in your life, right? Like my mortgage is held by the government; it's not held by a bank that's gonna fuck me, right? Like the banks themselves, I don't think that they can get away with doing the kinds of large-scale fraud that Wells Fargo can get away with, right? Like Wells Fargo can just do massive wide-scale fraud like on a systemic level, and then like a couple of random employees get arrested and they get a slap on the wrist that costs them less than they made in profit from ripping people off, right? Like I don't think the local banks can get away with that because the local politicians are too hyper conscious of perceived corruption, right? So local politicians here are not going to just step in and hand wave away the, you know, these kinds of like large institutional problems, right? And there was like a corruption scandal here recently where like some politician was doing something that they weren't supposed to be doing. There was some, I don't remember what it was. It might have been like an embezzlement thing or something. I don't remember what they were doing. Okay, let's find out. Let's find out what counts as a political scandal. Singapore corruption case. Let's see. Okay, so the Corrupt Practices Investigation Bureau is a government agency. So, let's see what their press release was about. Man charged for allegedly offering $30 to bribe an ICA officer. Let's see, HBO charged for corruption offenses related to sanitary contracts. That sounds like a thing. Ooh, cop sentenced to 78 months imprisonment. Oh, is it S Iswaran? It's probably S Iswaran. So. So this guy looks like received gifts with no like specific associated thing in that, but those are additional charges. So let's see if we can find more about this guy. Okay, so this is from January. So this is the most recent like big corruption scandal. So we're gonna save this. This is a Singapore news stream now. Okay, this is a Singapore news stream. Give me a second to find. Okay, we're going to delete the source because we don't need it. These are the things that happen. Yeah, this is the Singapore News Network, exactly. I think that might actually be an entity, so I shouldn't say that. So, okay, so this is CPID. That's the source name. Window. Okay. So let's move me to the front here and chat to the front here. I guess I could just move this back. That would make more sense. There we go. Ooh, that white on white. Can we make this dark mode? Exclude from dark mode is an option. So this website doesn't handle dark mode very well, apparently. Okay, so in accordance to the usual procedure, so-and-so was informed he'd be charged. So he has 2 charges of corruption. There's an additional charge here. First charge alleges that he obtained gratification with a total value of 145 grand as inducement. Oh, this was as an actual inducement? Oh ho ho! This is different than the additional charges that were added. For advancing Ong's business interests in matters relating to a contract between Singapore GP and Singapore Tourism Board. Second charge alleges that Iswaran corruptly obtained gratification for 20 grand as inducement for advancing the business interests in a matter related to contract between 24 charges for an amount. So this is the no consideration thing where someone just gives you money for free, right? Which is explicitly corruption. You, as a public servant, receiving gifts from the public is not. There's no non-corrupt way to do that. So in Singapore, it is explicitly illegal to accept money from the public. And if somebody even for teachers are public servants. As a teacher, there is a strict monetary limit on if a parent decides to give the teacher a gift, which is I think a fairly normal thing people want to do. Wait, why my face isn't visible? What am I doing? I put it right ahead of the webcam. Why did you not go down? That's weird. I don't know why that. The UI behaves weirdly with that. Let's see. So basically, even as a teacher, if a parent gives you something, you immediately have to report that they gave that to you, and if it's above a certain financial value, you just have to say no, right? If it's more than it's something small. It's $20 maybe. It's a tiny amount. If they give you an orange, you're fine, right? They can give you an apple, but if they give you an apple, you do have to report it, right? And so receiving gifts from the public seems like a normal thing because it's oh yeah, people will want to give you things because you do a public service. However, the issue with that is that certain types of people are going to be giving you much larger gifts, and those gifts have a political influence regardless of whether they ask for anything in return, right? Because those kinds of things influence a bunch of different stuff. The other thing that's really funny here is that these are tiny amounts of money. This is such a tiny amount of money to go to prison for. This guy is a minister. Singapore ministers make so much frickin' money. They are paid very well because, again, Singapore takes corruption very seriously. So one of the things that Singapore notes is that a poor minister is a minister that is very vulnerable to bribes. Right? Like, a minister that's poor is vulnerable to bribes. So, Singapore minister salary. So, a minister makes a $607,000 fixed salary. Okay? And some of it, and this, apparently their annual salary is like, works out to like $935,000, and some of it's variable. I don't know how the variable component works, so I'm going to ignore that because I don't know about like what responsibilities this guy has and whether maybe it's like ministers with more responsibility have more thingers. It doesn't matter. So, according to this website, which is the Singapore government, well, according to what Google says this website says, which it should just be directly quoting, but I don't trust Google anymore, so let's click on it. So, minister may start at the lower end of the MR4 range with a monthly salary of $46,750. Monthly salary of $46,750. This works out to an annual salary of $935,000, of which $607,000 is fixed and the rest is variable. This man did all of this corruption, he took a bribe for $145,000. This is 3 months' salary for him. And that was starting salary. I don't know how much the senior ministers are making, and this guy might be a senior minister, right? The idea that someone would be bought off so cheaply, right? Like, Singapore ministers make more money than the American president does. Truly wild shit. Now, admittedly, the American president makes that money for the rest of their life, so there is that as well. But you never stop receiving your salary as the president. Once you were the president, you receive that salary forever. But anyway, this is the kind of like corruption shit that goes on in Singapore. Is like, okay, this guy was given a gift for like, $145,000 to do this thing, and also he accepted a decent bit of money from people who just didn't say do this thing and I'll give you this money, but just he accepted a bunch of money that he shouldn't have accepted, and so the total of like $300,000 in money that it's closer to $400,000 because it's like 360 here, and then you have another like it was like 20 grand or something like that. So it's about like 600 grand, which again is like his annual salary, and like I don't know how like this applies. In the sense that, like, I don't know how it applies when you have, like, how many counts? Like, you have so many counts. There's 24 counts of bribery here. There's 24 counts of it. I don't know how that applies to this. So it's possible that he can only go to jail for 7 years because they just take it as a general case. And it's possible that it's like, on a thinger basis. But regardless, because I think that this $100,000 is definitely like each time you take a bribe. So, at any rate, wild shit. But that's like Singapore's approach to handling corruption. Whereas not every country treats corruption as seriously as Singapore does. Anyway, so because of that, I think that it's less likely that you're going to see stuff like, basically like blatantly criminal behavior on a large scale, where it's like, oh yes, this company is just engaging in mass fraud, because There's oh right, yes, that's why I moved the camera lower in the first place. That's why I was wondering why it was there, and now we know. Should I align it with chat? No, because if I align it with chat, it looks incorrectly aligned. It looks like I'm cutting off chat, but that's not me cutting off chat. That's just the field. So, what was I saying? So yeah, it's good to take corruption seriously. Like, legitimately, it's good to take corruption seriously. And as far as I can tell, Singapore seems to be pretty good at that. They actually do seem to be good at specifically that. But also, obviously, I'm an American, so, like, coming from an American perspective, I didn't realize Master Dagger was here. I could be just pumping Dagger up to 20. Alright, let's start pumping Master Dagger. As an American, like, obviously, anything other than corruption being explicitly legally enshrined in the, in the legal code is, wow, you take corruption really seriously here, don't you? That's my, back. Oh no, the kerning. It's not actually kerning, I don't think, but it's a term I've heard. I don't like the thing. You know what? We're gonna make this just slightly smaller so that we can fit you in between, chat, and the thing below you without cutting off either of them. Why do you? Yeah. Well, to be clear, look, in America, bribery isn't a crime. Actually, explicitly now, one of the things that the Supreme Court did recently was make it so that bribery is not a crime. For, like, huge swaths of I think, like, state and federal offices, but maybe it was just state offices. I think it might just be state offices where bribery is explicitly no longer a crime. So, like, if a person says, I'm going to give you $500,000 for the purpose of buying me, of like, you using your influence to do this thing, I think that's explicitly legal now. Like, you don't have to pretend that this is a political donation just because you love them so much. You don't have to say that anymore. You can just say, I want you to take the money that I'm giving you, and as a result of receiving this money, do this thing I want you to do politically. I want you to use your office that you have to do this thing. That's now legal in a lot of cases. So that's fun. Maybe don't quote me on that. I'm pretty sure that I'm remembering that correctly, but it was a while ago, and a lot has happened in the last few months. So hey, that's really the key, right? It's kind of like how, like, you can never really trust crime statistics because it's like, the crime rate has gone up. It's like, oh, okay, did the number of people who are doing bad things increase, or did the number of things you consider to be crimes increase? Because both of those will lead to an increase in the rate at which people are committing crimes, right? Because if you increase the number of behaviors that are crimes, more people that were not committing a crime yesterday are committing a crime today. Not because they're changing their behavior, but because you're changing the way that you classify their behavior, right? So which is something that, like, you'd think people would use more politically, but they don't really bother because nobody bothers to look at the crime rates. Because, like, every time people are complaining about the crime rate being up, the crime rate is down. So it's like, people don't, like, bother. It's like, oh no, the violent crimes are getting out of control. And it's like, violent crimes are at the lowest they've been in 40 years.
that one.
What you're seeing is actually just that you're watching too much crime dramas. And acting like the stupid shit that the characters on the TV show say have anything to do with reality.
Come on, then.
Fine.
I feel like, you know, God, what is that expression? Like the greatest lie the devil ever told was that that he wasn't real or some shit. Like it's more like, you know, oh yeah, the greatest lie the devil ever told was that we should have fucking cop shows as a thing that exists. As like a, you know, avenue for creating like incredibly brain dead reactionary politics. I don't think there's anything that compares with cop shows for generating the most brain dead politics, like in the people that watch them. It's really nuts. I don't know if anyone here has seen like the Skip Intro Propaganda series, but it's real good. It's really wild how like just incredibly mask off those shows can be, and still have people who, you know, like, are like, you know, oh no, you know, I'm, you know, Democrat voter. I don't, you know, I don't hate minorities and the poor, but these dangerous criminals. It's like, you know, oh no, Miranda rights. God, those were a mistake. You know, all these criminals getting away on the technicality that we committed a bunch of crimes and framed them for a crime that they didn't commit. How dare they get off on those technicalities that we as the prosecuting entity engaged in a bunch of crimes. It's like, well, you know, have you considered maybe not doing crimes in the acquisition of the stuff that you're trying to do, right? Whether it's your, you know, I want to say evidence, but I don't want to say evidence without the quotes around it, so...
I'm hurt.
Because, like, the thing about the cop shows is the cops are the protagonists, right? So they'll have them doing the things that are illegal and bad that cops do in order to falsify evidence, right? The reason that these things are illegal is in part because their primary usage case is to falsify evidence, right? So that's like a big component of why you're not allowed to admit evidence obtained in these illegal manners in court, is because it's like, yeah, this evidence is illegitimate. Some of it has to do with like the actual civil rights of, you know, the people of the country, but a good portion of it is just that it's not really evidence, it's fake evidence, right? Like, as an example, like if you coerce a confession out of someone, okay, if we have anybody from Japan in chat, maybe like leave, because I'm going to say something really like that you won't approve of. But if you coerce a confession out of someone, that's not evidence that they did the crime. There's someone being, you beating the shit out of someone until they confess to a crime is not evidence that they committed a crime, right? So like one of the rules that we have in place with regards to like the acquisition of evidence is that you're not allowed to just beat the shit out of someone to get a confession out of them, right? But then every cop show, all the cops just want to beat the shit out of someone to get a confession out of them, because on a cop show, if they could beat the shit out of someone to get a confession out of them, that confession would be legitimate, according to the rules of the world that are ascribed by these cop shows. Beating a confession out of someone, you couldn't beat a confession out of an innocent person. That's not a thing you could do, which is just objectively untrue, and everybody knows that that's untrue if you look at it if you look at like any of the data, right? The issue is that not everybody actually does look at the data, so they don't know that that's obviously untrue. But like, honestly, you don't even need to look at the data to know that. You just have to like use common sense, because like it's not like it's a thing that only happens with cops, right? Like this is a thing that happens with parents too. Like parents will just beat the shit out of their kids until they confess to something that they didn't do, right? Like think about the like Salem witch trials and stuff like that, where it's like the principal thing that they were doing was, we're going to torture you until you confess to doing this crime. So if you confess to the crime, you will stop being tortured, right? So the point being, which worked, it got a bunch of confessions. A bunch of people confessed to witchcraft and got executed because they wanted the torture to stop, right? So like, this is just also, I will just say, okay, I saw a Smosh video recently. I saw the very beginning of a Smosh video recently where they were playing a game that takes place in the town of Salem, and the principal conceit of the game entails there actually being witches in the town of Salem for the Salem witch trials. And I think that's in really bad taste. Like, actually, like, from a game design perspective, making a game that is like a werewolf game with the Salem witch trials, where there's an actual witch, is like, is bad. I don't think that that's moral. You shouldn't make that game. You should not make a werewolf game where there's, because we're talking about like a like historic, you know, mass hysteria event that killed a bunch of people that's still relevant to this day because people are still engaging in the same kinds of like crazy behavior that led to the Salem witch massacre, right? Like that event, you can make stuff about it, right? I don't have any objection. Like people like making media about Salem. It's like, yeah, Salem is like a whole thing, and having the whole place be fucking cursed because of all the horrifying things that people did in Salem. Like, sure, but I just think it's weird. It's kind of like the obsession with what's her name? The girl who may or may not have killed her family with a hatchet, right? It's just weird to me to make certain types of media about certain types of things. Yeah, that sounds like what I would expect out of the Japanese criminal justice system. Look, you play Persona 5, you immediately lose all respect for the Japanese criminal justice system. Assuming you had any in the first place. The issue that the criminal justice system runs into there is that, like, sure, like, Persona 5 is, like, fiction, but also they have like a 100% conviction rate, and I'm sorry, my guy, but that's dictator numbers, right? That's like, you know, Putin won this election numbers for your fucking cops, right? Like, it's not unreasonable to think that a society could, in theory, create a criminal justice system where they simply do not bring charges unless they have a strong enough case to convict. However, we also know that confession is the primary means by which they get confessions, to the point where, you know, Japanese people have this huge obsession with getting villains in media to confess to their crimes, as if that's a thing that anyone on Earth has ever done. That's tied directly to their sense of, like, the criminal justice system of, like, oh, you know, if you just debate bro this person well enough and prove that they've done it, they'll admit it. And it's like, that's not true. That's not true. They won't admit it if you debate bro them into a corner. Objection! It doesn't work that way. So, like, you can prove that a person is lying, right? But, like, by the way, I've never played Phoenix Wright, so I don't know. Like, in Phoenix Wright, do they all end up confessing in the end? Is that how it works? Because if it is, then it's literally, like... Because I haven't played the games, but, like, everything that I've seen in other media that's not specifically about the criminal justice system heavily implies to me that the way that they are getting confessions, or the way that they're getting their criminals prosecuted, is they admit to having done a crime. And I don't trust any confessions as a... If somebody confesses to a crime, I'm less likely to believe they did it.
Yes.
I'm less likely to believe someone committed a crime if they admit to having done the crime. Now, that doesn't mean to say that if there's a bunch of evidence that someone did a crime and then they admit they did it, that I will, like, disbelieve it in the face of that evidence, right? I'm not, you know... But if there's, like, some, like... If there's enough evidence that I'm like, you know, I'm iffy on this. I think that this person might have actually done this thing. If I find out that, like, the cops got them to confess, I go, okay, maybe they didn't actually. Maybe they didn't actually, because I don't expect people to confess with it. When you do a crime, why would you confess other than through, you know, coercion, right? Like, you wouldn't... Why would you admit that you did it unless you were threatened? So, anyway. The answer is you wouldn't. Nobody does. Yeah, I've seen a lot of stuff about the criminal justice system in Japan over the years, like, in, like, little tiny pieces, right? Like, I've never done, like, a super deep dive into it, I don't think. We have multiple pack leaders, don't we? Yeah, we sure do. This is gonna get rough because of the automatically aggroed enemies. We needed to have a little bit more food. If we had 20 food, I think that this would be a pretty chill dungeon until we get to our first bosses, which are probably gonna obliterate me. But the issue is that with the randomly aggro, like the randomly pre-aggroed enemies when you reload, that makes a huge difference in my ability to survive here. Let's see. But yeah, Japan's got a lot of problems. It's a very corrupt country in ways that, like, are, like, almost hard to quantify, because once you reach a certain level of corruption, it's like, how do you demonstrate the corruption at this point? But it's like corrupt in, like, this... It's corrupt in ways that are different, I think, in a lot of ways, than the way that, like, most places are corrupt. Like, Japan's, like, still very feudal in a lot of ways. Like, a lot of the dynamics of, like, the way that businesses are run and things like that in Japan seem to be tied into, like, feudal aristocracy shit that doesn't exist on paper, but which still exists in practice. But yeah, I get... You know what I'm thinking? Because I think that Danganronpa...
Yes.
I think Danganronpa is basically similar to Phoenix Wright, right? Like, there's similar like court drama games, right? So, and Danganronpa, you always get a confession, right? Like, they always confess at the end, don't they? Or do they sometimes not? Oh, Jesus. Because I feel like in Danganronpa, you're basically... you're basically debate broing people into confessing, right? I think that's the mechanically what ends up happening with Danganronpa games. But I could be wrong. But I think that has to be the way that it works, because I think that one of the rules of like the system was that like it has to be like a unanimous vote or some shit. So like there can't be any room for ambiguity about whether this person did it. So I think they have to have a confession where the person just kind of admits to having done the crime. But I don't know. I'm trying to think if there's ever been a time where it was ambiguous until after the reveal whether the person had done it or not. Like, you get a couple false confessions in the series. But I do think that it's fundamentally about debate growing into the confession.
Nice shot.
Oh, jeez. Okay, we need to back out of here. Let's see if we can set them up in this corner. I seem to recall this corner working okay. Like, this isn't a good corner, but it's a corner that gives you better results than doing nothing, basically. So there is a pack leader here. We want to try to burn down the pack leader if we can. It's in the back.
I'm hurt.
I don't know.
Is that only, so here? I'm actually quite curious. Is the law gendered in that way? Is the law gendered where only the wife can do that, and she can only try to get money out of the other woman? Because that would very much be some crazy shit. Because it's like, hey man, like, cheating on people, the only person that's done something wrong is the person cheating. The other woman or the other man are not morally accountable for the sort of like crime of cheating, right? Like, this is a thing that I firmly believe. There are some situations where that's not the case, where it's like really fucked up, where it's like, oh yeah, this is like, you know, your best friend, right? It's like, okay, yeah, you have an existing relationship with the person that they were cheating with that makes it so that, yeah, no, that's really fucked up of you to do that, right? But like, because of your relationship with the victim, right? Like, not because of like, you know, the thing, but like, so like if you have an existing relationship with the person, then you shouldn't, you know, do bad things to them, and you shouldn't do bad things to people generally, right? But like, I don't hold people morally accountable for cheating, or sorry, not for being the person that someone cheats with, because it's just like it's too complicated, right? Like, you know, I have a friend who, you know, was in an abusive relationship, and at one point they were, you know, cheating on that person, and that's how they got out of that relationship. Is that they in order to get out of the abusive relationship they were in, they needed to get access to things that their partner didn't want them to have access to, which is like a social life outside of them, right? And so one of the consequences of that ended up being, you know, that they were cheating on them for, you know, a short period of time before they got out of the relationship entirely, right? But like, on a fundamental level, like, I'm much more concerned about the kinds of shit that people do in a relationship than I am about cheating, because cheating is something where it's like there's an infinite number of ways that can happen. It also doesn't mean a very specific, clear-cut thing. So like as a behavior, it's hard to, condemn it categorically, because it's like, well, what does that mean in the first place? But anyway, point being that like, if I'm like seeing that like a country has laws to like go after the other woman, right? It's like, yes, I see. I see how, and you can see where you get that kind of stuff, right? Like to a large extent that, right, yeah, you open, I forgot. Okay, we don't usually have the ability to just jump up here. Yep, that sounds like. Yeah, this is the kind of misogyny that you tend to expect out of countries that don't like to address any of their underlying core issues. Like, unironically, because like that's a law that is straight out of the 1800s, right? Like that's something that if you go to anywhere in the Western world in the 1800s, that's the law. Nobody's paying child support for a kid if the person is married to somebody else. The marriage contract is what makes them have to take care of the kid. So if you're not married, then you're not taking care of the kid, right? There might be some like things to that, but that's a very, very common bullshit thing that whatchamacallits, excuse me, the countries do. Let's see. So, because the woman is property, and her children are now the property of the new person, that's why it's misogyny. Like, the law is not explicitly misogynistic, but the law relies upon a framework that presumes that a woman does not have any money of her own, and that the responsibility that a man has to a woman is a contractual one that is tied in with her marital status, right? So basically, if you're familiar with the concept of like conservatorship, the way that traditional marriage works is that a man becomes a conservator for a woman and gains all of the ability, gains access to the power of attorney, gets access to her property, gets access to all of the things, right, that are hers, right? That is the default from which all of these laws are springing. You can't take it out of the context of history. And in the context of history, a marriage has been a arrangement of slavery. Like, unironically, that's what it has historically been. It isn't that today, but the key is that, I mean, it's not always that today. For a lot of people, it is like that. And certain countries lean into it more than others, right? So when you're looking at sort of like the legal architecture surrounding marriage, right? As a parent, you created a child. And as a parent, you have a legal obligation to that child that does not go away. And you have a moral obligation to that child that does not go away. Right? The mother of the child marrying some guy has nothing to do with the father. right? Like, my stepmother is not a mother to me. She was a roommate that lived in my house for a while. And it caused really serious problems when she tried to be my mother.
Who wants some?
Because she's not. She's just a fucking random stranger that I met as a teenager, okay? A person who comes into your life later can become your parent in a social manner. They can socialize into being your parent, but there's absolutely no direct line between this person married a person's parent and then being a parent to you. That's just not a thing. Right? So I don't think that parents have a right to their children that exceeds... They have some rights to their children in the sense of, like, they have a reasonable level of discretion. What reasonable means for me means something very different than for most people, probably, because most people think that parents should be able to abuse their children. But they have some discretion, they have some rights as parents, and it's good that those rights are enshrined to some degree, because they should have some ability to do some things. Not a ton, not nearly as much as they have. They shouldn't have as many rights and privileges as they have in most countries today. But the important thing is that regardless of whether you have a strong amount of rights and control over another person, that doesn't change whether you have a responsibility to them. And the parents have a responsibility to the child that is not reciprocal. The parents are responsible for the child because they created the child. They are directly responsible for this person's existence, and so they have a responsibility to caretake for them because they are responsible for them. And that does not mean that they should have the right to control their behavior. It doesn't mean that they should have the right to see them. It doesn't mean that they should have the right to anything. It means that they have a responsibility for this person that is one-sided. It is. It's kids don't choose to be born. They are. This was not a consensual, reciprocal, interaction that occurred. So as a result of that, the dynamic of, oh, okay, so this person married your mom, so now they're your dad, is not...
Who needs it?
Is not like you can just like ascribe all the associations there. From my perspective, that feels like deeply tied in with like very, very reactionary norms that are tied in fundamentally to the origins of the way that like marriage and parenting and things like that, like where they all come from, right? Because none of this stuff happens in a vacuum. So, like that's my perspective, right? Is that like if anytime you're looking at like stuff where it's like, okay, well, this random guy is now responsible for a child because he's in a romantic relationship with the mother. That's I guarantee you the source of that is going to be misogyny. The specific thing itself, no, he marries someone. He doesn't have a relationship with the child by default just because he marries someone, right? There's some implication that they're probably going to be living together, but again, marrying my dad doesn't make you my mom. Marrying my mom doesn't make you my dad, right? Like, this is less true for really young kids, but if I'm 14, right, and you think that you're my dad when you are explicitly not, and we do not have a relationship, right? Like that is a huge issue, right? And it's not just a cultural issue, right? It comes down to like, you know, fundamental what's the word I'm looking for? It comes down to God, what words are hard? Principles. Philosophical term referring to postulates. It's postulates. It's postulates, but it's not math. It's philosophy. So axioms. It comes down to axioms, right? Like axiomatically, these are like the moral prescriptions that I have that apply regardless of society, right? Like this, and it's important to know that culturally Japan is extremely misogynist, right? Like both culturally and legally and everything else, Japan is an extremely misogynist country that uses women as political favors to secure alliances between feudal houses, right? Like this isn't in a neutral environment. Again, the environment is an environment that is known and understood by all involved to be extremely misogynist. Like, no one's going to say Japan isn't super misogynist, right? Like, that would be a strong claim to try to defend. So when you're looking at like marriage architecture is where you're going to see the most like weird, like, you know, I mean, not as much as what? Like, it's, I guess not as much as Korea. Not as much as Korea, I guess. It's not as misogynist as Korea. I will give Japan that. It's not as misogynist as Korea. It's not changes. This isn't like about changes, right? Like, it's because like a lot of this shit is tied into feudal aristocracy. That's not like being slow to change. That's not having a desire to change because you are a literal duke. Like, it's like the power structures don't want people to live good lives. Like, that's like the fundamental antagonism between the proletariat and the bourgeois takes a lot of different, like, you know, forms. But like, God, it was Japan, right? Like, remember the cheating scandal in Japan, where in order to get into medicine, they just arbitrarily increased, I think it was like a 50% higher threshold for women than it was for men across all of the medical schools? They were just actively saying, if you want to get into medical school as a man, you don't have to be nearly as good as a woman. Like, nowhere near as good as a woman to get into medical school. Because they were just doing this massive cheating behind the scenes where they weighted the scores according to the person's gender. So, like, holy shit. Like, so, like, this isn't like, oh, we're slow to act. This is, we hate women and want them subservient to us. Not necessarily hate. We want women subservient to us because we benefit from having women subservient to us, and so we will continue to propagate structures that keep women subservient to us, right? Like, this is very, very basic, like, analysis, right? Like, yeah, this is very basic class analysis. Like, Karl Marx once wrote. Yeah, like, remember, like, cultures aren't an accident. Cultures exist because people created them. And they created them for a reason. They didn't create them in a vacuum. They created them because they wanted to accomplish certain tasks. Yeah, like there's so much crazy, and to a degree, the like medical, students thing is very much like, it's emblematic of what women have to deal with worldwide in trying to get taken seriously, right? And back when did women have the right to control the finances of their husband? Because it certainly wasn't 100 years ago. Because 100 years ago, the wife had no right to any money, including her own. So at what point in human history did wives have both the responsibility for the income and the right to actually implement on that? I don't think that was true in Japan post-World War II. I don't think post-World War II Japan, the wives were directly in control of their husband's finances and had the right to do so. I don't think that that's accurate. They obviously have the responsibility for finances in the industrial era, right? But they don't have a right to it. And that's like an important distinction, right? Like, having to manage someone else's money, to be the accountant for your household, is not the same thing as having control. Because you don't have control because you have no right to any of that money. Because it's not your money, it's your husband's money. It's not your house, it's your husband's house. You're the accountant. And there's a big difference between being an accountant and being a capitalist. They're not the same thing, right? So, like, give the person who chooses how the money is spent day to day is not the same thing as the person who actually controls the money. If that makes any sense? Because the person who controls the money is the person who has the right to use it however they see fit. That's the person who controls it. No, the reason that men weren't in charge of the household finances was because they were dying in factories. Like, don't get it twisted, right? Like, the gender roles of that time are derived from factory work that was killing people. Like, the Industrial Revolution had some meaningful impacts on a lot of different things. But a lot of the like gender roles that we have regarding a lot of different things are tied up fundamentally in, if you're working for 16 hours a day in a factory that's probably going to kill you by the time you're 40, you simply don't have time to do anything, right? So, like, the woman has to be in charge of the finances because she's the only one who can buy groceries, because there's no time in the day to do groceries for the man. Now, this eventually transitioned, once the capitalists realized that they could have both the men and the women working, into the current learned helplessness of men, where men are generally incapable of doing everything because they're bad in the workforce because the standards are lower for them. See the medical system example. But that's like a very extreme example of a very common trend where women objectively have to do twice as good to be considered on par with men in a professional setting. So women tend to be better than men at everything that they do professionally, but then back in the household, they're expected to do everything, right? They're raised with the idea that they need to caretake for their brothers, right? They're raised with the idea that they have to do everything in the household. And so you end up this situation where women just end up being better than men at, like, kind of everything, because they're still expected to do all of the things that they were expected to do when they weren't working full time, but now they're also working full time, because if they don't, then they're fucked. Right? That idea is cope, and is not tied in with like the actual real reasons socially that people do things. It's just not. The men have control of the finances, so if they want to go, spend money, they're going to do it, because there's nothing that a woman can do to stop them from doing it, because the woman doesn't have any right to that money. Right? Like, the reason that she does the finances is because the man doesn't want to do it. There's no other reason for it. He has complete control. So if the man doesn't want her to have control of the finances, which is a very common thing these days, right? Like, it's very common these days for like conservative men to not want their wives to have access to money. Then she won't have access to it. And that's an arbitrary thing that is chosen by the person involved. I think drugs are probably a lot more expensive and painful than Twitch is. I will say. That is a pretty decent amount of HP. I do hate to say that my migraine's up to a 2 now, which is very unfortunate. I'm having a really good time, and I love talking about this kind of stuff. And I have an hour and 20 minutes left in stream, and I really, really don't want to end stream. So here's my question. What if Yoshihiro decides not to? What if Yoshihiro one day says no? Or what if Yoshihiro gives half his salary to his wife and tells her it's his entire salary? He controls the finances. They're his finances. He has complete control over how they're used. The fact that he delegates that task to an accountant does not mean that it's not his money and his choice. He has complete control of how that money is used. And if he gives the money to her and he doesn't like how she's using it, he has the authority at will to stop giving her the money. The power is in the person who can just say no, I'm doing whatever the fuck I want. Just because someone is doing the accounting doesn't mean they control the money. He has to give the money. His company doesn't give her the money. He gives her the money. There's a huge difference between these two things. There is such a huge difference. The framing on this is inversing the power relationship for a political reason. There is a reason that they are trying to pretend that the women have control here. And it's because it looks really bad to say, oh yeah, like, you don't have any control over your finances. I don't think that's true. I'm like not gonna lie, I don't think that that's remotely accurate. I mean, they might rule the home, but the man doesn't spend any. Notoriously, men don't spend any time at home. Like, I don't know if you're aware of this in Japanese culture. Famously, men don't spend time in their houses. Like, they famously do not spend any time there. Like, it's like, this is really important. Like, they don't spend time in their houses. And look, man, if their wife gets upset with them, famously they don't spend very much time with them, so they can get a new accountant, man. Like, if they don't have a strong, I went to the wrong place. They don't have a strong financial or like social. There's no like pressure on them to force their behavior, right? So but when you're looking at this stuff, you want to look at it from a larger cultural perspective, and you want to have a frame of analysis that you're looking at it from, right? You want to, like, I'm looking at most things from like more of like a, you know, Marxian-ish perspective, right? Why not? They can stop feeding their kids. Why not? Like, that's never stopped anybody. They could do whatever they want. Like, and in theory, you know, you could bring them to court if they aren't giving enough money to feed the kids, but you also need to know how much money they're making. Like, you don't know that the husband is making twice as much as he's bringing home. You don't know what he's doing. He's never home. Right? Like, unless, so like think about it this way. If you have a joint account that the money is being deposited into from your company, so like let's say the company is depositing money into a joint account that is you and your spouse's. If the company does that, the spouse knows how much money you're making from the company, right? If you're taking money from your personal account and depositing it into her personal account, she has no idea how much money is in your personal account. Right? Who sends? Because it says that the guy is sending the salary. If the guy is sending the salary, he can just lie. They don't have joint bank accounts. It's not theoretically, like, the money defaults to being hidden. The money is hidden until you reveal it. Right? Like, so unless the way that they're describing this is incorrect and the money is being deposited into her account, the money defaults to being hidden. You're giving the wife a stipend, and then she gives you a stipend out of the money that she is given by you. Right? This is like explicitly designed in such a way to maximally hide money. Like, this is like embezzlement 101, right? Like, don't give people access to the information. How is the wife managing his bank book? She has a separate account. She can't manage his banking stuff. She can't manage his account. That's fraud. It's not her account. She can't claim to be him to manage his finances in his account. She has it deposited in her account that she manages. But he can also just write the wrong amount in his bank book. Like, you do that yourself manually, right? Just looking at this, this looks like maximally set up to allow men to hide money from their wives. But you can hide it if you have the book, because the book isn't a legally binding document, right? It's not. That's not like the book is a way for you to keep track of your personal finances. It's not like a direct relationship with you and your bank. Like that, none of that shit is notarized. Unless they're notarizing it there, but it seems like a lot of steps to go through. Like think about how many steps this is going through in order to allow someone to, in theory, maybe know how much money their spouse has compared to having a joint account. So why don't they have joint accounts? They don't have joint accounts for, I think, fairly obvious reasons. Because the goal, the initial pressure, is to hide the money that the husband is making from the wife. Right? Like, that's the goal. That's the reason that it's there. I don't know that there's a lot of wiggle room around that. They apparently don't have joint accounts, but they don't have joint accounts, again, for a reason. None of this is happening in a vacuum. All of these things that women are doing to try to keep track of their husband's finances are things they're doing because they can't know what he's up to unless they jump through a bunch of hoops to figure out what he's doing with his finances. Because he's never home, she never sees him, and like, she has no control over any of the finances of the home by default because there's no joint accounts, so she's completely destitute unless he wires money to her. Which, again, I will point out, exactly mirrors how the financial relationship between the women as property of the 1500s had with their husbands. Like, there's not a big delineation here between what used to be the case and what is the case now. If you go back to, like, this is like very, very old school feudalism shit, right? I don't want to have... Okay, what we're going to do first is... Again, I'm enjoying this, and I don't want to have to extreme. But the eyes... Okay, we're gonna put some drops in my eyes. We're turning off the camera because the issue is that, like, I started stream. I didn't sleep well last night, so I started with a migraine. And the problem with migraines is, as you're looking at lights and stuff like that, it keeps getting worse. So the problem is that sometimes my life doesn't want me to just enjoy things. And my body is stupid and hates me. Also, I need to pause. So where are the drops? Oh, right. Oh no, did I? Ooh. Oh, I might have run out of the good eye drops. I don't think sunglasses will be helpful because if I have sunglasses, those are going to make me strain as well. It's a whole thing. Honestly, the correct response to the problem that I'm experiencing right now is that I need to stop looking at a screen consistently. Part of the reason that I stopped playing and I've just been talking, part of the reason that I stopped doing the actual playing part is that it's getting harder and harder to look at the screen. So I should probably just end stream unless I want to just do a full 1 hour just talking session at the end. That I don't think I want to do. I think that it's better for me to, because I'm also having to read, which is not optimal for a headache. It's not a huge deal, but it's like not. I should really just get myself in a position where I don't have to do anything, because if I'm at a 2 now, I could be at an 8 in 3 hours. And I don't think I'm at the point where it's yes. So, unfortunately, we are going to end early today. I've been very much enjoying this conversation, but I for unrelated physical reasons, I think I need to end early today. So, next time we will be doing something, and honestly, I'm so out of it that I don't even know what we're doing. I may or may not convert these reloads into punishments today, because I have a migraine and I'm probably not going to want to do this stuff unless the migraine goes away by the end of the day. So I might just store this. I might just store these reloads and then we can use them tomorrow, because we're having to end early. And yeah, tomorrow's Friday, so that should be good. But anyway, thank you everyone for watching. It has been a pleasure to stream for you today. I do wish that I could just keep streaming, because one of the great things to do with a migraine is to not be paying attention to the migraine. And as soon as I turn off stream, that's all I'm going to have on my mind, which is going to suck. But yeah, we have to end, because I'm staring at I'm making it worse. So I'll see you all next time.